In the January of 1999, there was a small ad that appeared in the local newspaper, and it was under a Shire of Swan public notices. It was also over a holiday period, and whenever I have a discussion with people about these trees, I always have to remind people it's pre-mobile phone for most of us, and certainly pre-internet. So the City of Swan, Shire I should call them, as they were then, had organised a public meeting to discuss the removal of a significant number of the sugar gum trees in James Street in Guildford.
So we got a group of people together and then walked down Guildford Road and into the hall. So I just went up, and whoever was at the mic, I kind of went, "Could I have a word, please?" And he went, "Oh yes," stepped away from the mic, and I said, "Hello, here we are, we're being told that these trees need to be removed. What do we think about that?" And we passed some motions that suggested that they have the trees reviewed and, so on, about the state of their health and all that sort of thing, and passed a motion, and we didn't want them to just cut them down.
I think from that point on, the Shire recognised that there was going to be a huge response to any attempt to remove any of the trees. And it's important to bear in mind that at that stage, none of us had ever seen anything about limb drops being a major problem or any of those things. So we met with the Shire quite quickly. All sorts of issues arose about, insurance risk from falling limbs. And one report I read, the officer had said that the sugar gums actually only have a life of 60 years at best. Well, here we are, 130 years later, and they seem to be doing okay. So over the next couple of months, it became, what seemed to happen was that the Shire of Swan entrenched its position. It really was not going to budge. They did agree to commission some arboricultural reports, but of course what was behind that was trying to find some evidence that the trees were dangerous.
I think we put flyers around Guildford and said, come to a Save the Sugar Gums rally, and organised it for Saturday morning outside in the railway station car park, and that's the one that has Christine on the box with Jacob and everything, just explaining what was going on and that we need to organise, quite effectively and fast. Basically, the tree removers were going to be coming in on Monday, so this was the Saturday. So by Sunday we were organising our phone contacts and saying, please come along, we're going to put up tents along the side of the road and have a protest about this. And so we sent that message out and said, please come along at 4:00 and show your support, sort of thing. And I was over there because I was just across the rail line at 4:00 looking up and down thinking, oh dear, we'll have to try the phone tree out with something else.
No one was coming.
And no one appeared to be there. And then tents started popping up all along under the gum trees. Like, it was just absolutely amazing.
We all feared that during the night that they'd come in and start to fell the trees, and although we had a telephone chain which was set up to inform people if there was anything going on, we still weren't confident that by the time we got there we would actually be able to stop them. So I personally slept in my car one night under the trees down near the Guildford nursery, because I thought up this area there's plenty of people, plenty of lights. Down there was darker and a lot more likely to be inconspicuous. And two young teenagers actually slept in the trees on several nights, which I thought was stupid, but very, very valiant.
The first phone call came from Patsy Malloy, who had become aware of this and that there was action to take the trees down within days. So I recounted this to the family, who were equally horrified, And after a meal, my son David packed his rucksack and said, "I'm going off to the Sugar Gums."
We walked down James Street and having a look at the trees, and I think the trees had always been just an integral part of the town, of the history of the place, but I think just really recognising what that would look like if the trees weren't there, and I think that was quite a realisation that this was that there was a serious threat to the town.
He took a tent and his sleeping bag, waterproof tarps, a number of things. So he went up there and was joined soon by Simon Camp, one of his very good friends in Guildford. And Simon brought chains and a padlock to make sure no one could get them down. But they basically camped up there for about a week and they were not going to move. What was really wonderful was it spread from there.
It felt like it was probably a bit of a David and Goliath effort, but so quickly, so much of the community turned out that within days we had people camping right along the street. So many businesses were supporting us. So many members of the community were just coming out and showing their support. It was really nice.
Actually, one of the young guys around here told me that they're going to camp out at it, Simon Camp, and I heard from other people, Barbara Dundas and there. So I'm going to do it. So I set a tent up the road, just past Road of Motion, next to the tree, big tree. Set up a little camp, and then I just camped out there every night, and this amount of support. The pubs would come in and offer you cans of beer, which I don't drink, but they did. Alfred's Kitchen, Flintstones would bring you down sandwiches, and things like that, bits of pizza and that. Everybody stopped in, people visit, and my son was only 3 then, and he wanted to camp out with Dad. So he stayed 3 of the nights.
And we all got together, the locals then, and decided, well, no, how dare they, these people that were young, trying to tell us they're going to cut down these trees that are 130 odd years old. So that's how it began. So we decided, well, best thing we can do is we're going to set up a few tents and we're going to camp along every single tree and just see what they do.
We had an independent arborist to come and check.
Yeah.
But because they were actually driving around with their cherry pickers, so we're all sort of on guard. If we saw one up our end, it would be back to the command centre, and they'd send people up. So although we were scattered, we were communicating with each other about need help up here, or there's drums down the other end.
We didn't get much sleep at all for a week. It wasn't the best time of the year to be sleeping up a tree.
If you made up some slices or pancakes or something, we would take them down to the information tent, and there would be a fire going there, and Alfred's would provide soup in the evening for the boys and the others that eventually camped by the trees. So we ended up with initially one family for every tree, the 15 trees. Then we decided to put names of councillors on them. I think we omitted one, and they were tied round, so we had to paint those and get sheeting and things to cut up. But in the end, we ended up with about, I would say, possibly 3, maybe 4 families per tree, because people would have to go home. There was work and other things happening. So it was a huge involvement and investment of many people.
The support was fantastic. Everybody that stopped at the lights beeped, or if they didn't, they beeped and waved as they went past. So the support was not only Guildford, it was general, but certainly centred on Guildford.
We did the yellow ribbons.
That's right.
With crepe paper, so they were all marked. Yeah, and I think being on the thoroughfare, we had a lot of people just driving past, but getting involved as well. They'd stop, sign the petitions. I'm sure we all had clipboards with petitions to sign.
The police would stop in and come over and say hello and talk to you and say, what are you doing, and our speed cameras aren't working because everybody was slowed down along the road.
But it also moved into one of those very valuable experiences of community building and things like that. Where there was a great deal of harmony between people. There was a breakfast and a wood fire each morning. So there was a real coming together of people, and those that couldn't stay overnight, of course, took their turn staying during the day. I was meeting with someone at the city on an almost daily basis, and then we ended up thinking, well, we're not going to be able to shift them, so we'll need to take a Supreme Court injunction to stop them taking any action on the trees. And we had to raise a bit of money to do that, but that happened pretty quickly. And really it didn't get very much further than a letter from a fairly large law firm in town threatening that that's the course of action we would take.
So every day at 5 o'clock we had a ladder and put a ladder up, and Christine would say what was happening with the things like they went back and looked at the reports, which were the officers had put on top the worst case scenario of removal of trees.
Two people, Christine Hughes and Gerard Kearney, had done a lot of research on the exact information that the four arboriculturists had presented, and they found that in fact very few had recommended any tree removal.
And then fortuitously the CEO at the Shire went on leave, and it was fortuitous because he'd really wedded himself to a position, and the acting CEO was able to be much more open to some sort of compromise and things like that. So that allowed us, some breathing space, and we agreed to remove the camp on the understanding that the Shire would organise some remedial work. And we had to indulge what I think was a fantasy that the trees were unsafe. It's just never been borne out. 25 years later, we haven't had 100 deaths or any disasters. And then we had a fairly major meeting of Goodview councillors attended that. But by that stage they really did have an olive branch or a sugar gum branch to offer. They gave us some undertakings which ultimately a few of them have never been honoured. However, the principal one was that the trees be left, and of course that's ultimately what happened.
We had a dinner, a wonderful, wonderful dinner, the black tie dinner, so I was involved in that and helping people get their tables up, etc. We had tables with cloths on them, people had candelabras. It was really cold, it was in August. We had furs, anything we could jag out of the cupboard that looked really presentable and of a period. And then awards were given for the best tables that Neil from Alfred's Kitchen offered pea and ham soup free on that day to everybody, and it was fantastic.
David Bellamy, the international environmentalist, did come and visit the camp. On the last night of the camp we had a black tie dinner, and David Bellamy came to that event, which was quite extraordinary.
Barbara said to me, what does David want? we can give him dinner. And he liked the idea of a pavlova, and she brought a beautiful pavlova in a silver, serving vessel for him.
One noteworthy thing was that the acting CEO was Cliff Fruins, and Cliff, on the morning that we agreed to pack the camp up, he turned up, and out the back of the ute came a timber bench which he had commissioned a matter of, the poor bloke must have stayed up all night the day before from a woodworker in West Swan Road. And he wanted to make a gift of it to the people of Guildford, which was an extraordinarily kind gesture, and did set a path where we can work together and we don't have to do wicked things to each other. I've met very few people who are not moved by the splendour of the trees, the stature of the trees. I mean, they're just quite overwhelming in their beauty. I think we understood then we will always need to keep the story of the trees alive. I don't think anybody can rest on their laurels. I don't think we should ever lose sight of it. It's an obligation that falls to every generation, and I mean, I'm not marvellous on the European history of Guildford, but I am aware of the many, many public campaigns there have been, in terms of Stirling Square, a whole lot of things, but particularly those sugar gums. We're carrying on a tradition in preserving them in the way in which we have been.